It's common sense for a wife to spend every Christmas at her husband's family home.
My husband named Joe started lecturing me with that outdated opinion, something you wouldn't even hear back in the 60s. When he realized I wasn't going to agree with him, he decided to ignore me for days.
I can't take it anymore.
I thought,
If he definitely wants me to visit his parents' place, I'll give him exactly what he wants. He'll regret it soon enough, though.
my name is Mary. I'm 38 years old and love shopping at wholesale stores. In times of high prices, they're a lifesaver. In fact, my freezer is always stuffed to the brim because of that. When I was younger, I used to just grab whatever seemed cheap at the nearest grocery store, but now, I feel like I've really gotten the hang of things, growing some of my own vegetables and making good use of wholesale stores. I guess this is what they call the wisdom of age. When I was in my 20s, I quit my job to get married to Joe, one of my colleagues at the same company. He was reliable at work, and I thought we'd build a wonderful family together, but I was wrong. One day, right before our first Christmas after getting married, Joe said to me,
This year, since we're newlyweds, I'd like you to stay at my parents' place for a week around Christmas.
For a week? I want to visit my family too, but it will be impossible then.
Can't you just push back your trip to your family's place?
No way. Once the Christmas holiday is over, I have to go back to my part-time job.
I see, but my parents are really looking forward to seeing you.
Seeing him scratch his head, looking all troubled, made me feel bad. Indeed, I was glad to know his parents were excited to see me, while some in-laws wouldn't accept the wife as family. To be honest, I didn't really feel like I was part of their family. I always felt like I had to be on my best behavior when I was around them, and I wouldn't ever be nearly as comfortable as with my own family. That was why I did want to get closer to them, even just a little bit. When I consulted my parents, my mother said,
Considering the future relationship with them, it might be better for you to prioritize your in-laws this time.
She even told me,
In my opinion, a wife shouldn't go back to her own family too easily.
Thinking that was just how things were, I told Joe.
All right, I'll make the most of Christmas holiday at your parents' place this year.
He seemed really happy about that, so I thought everything was fine. However, after that, I didn't get to visit my own family for nearly 5 years. That was because he always found some excuse to keep me from going back. The first year, since we were newly married and Joe pleaded with me to stay with his parents so he could save face, I reluctantly agreed with him. In fact, I believed it was important to show respect for the husband's family, and he had a point. My mother also said,
You can always come home anytime, so it's fine. Sometimes it's good to prioritize your in-laws.
So I thought that was what it meant to be married. Thus, I went to Joe's parents' place not just for Christmas, but for other holidays like Easter, Memorial Day, and Thanksgiving. Every time, my in-laws were happy to see me, and I started feeling like I was truly becoming part of their family. However, by the second year, we were no longer newlyweds. I was pregnant at the time, and I really wanted to see my own parents before the baby arrived. When I told Joe that I wanted to visit my family around Thanksgiving, he responded with,
Why would you go to your parents' place? It's Thanksgiving.
That's because it's a 4-day holiday, and my family lives far away. It's hard to visit them otherwise. My parents are getting older too, and I want to see them while I still can.
You can visit anytime, or just call them. My parents are old too, and don't you think they'd appreciate seeing us over Thanksgiving?
Well, we've spent plenty of time with them over the past year, so…
That's not fair to my parents. They'll feel like you prefer your family over them, like they are being neglected.
Why are you so insistent that I see your parents?
Why are you so against seeing them?
I never said I didn't want to see them. That's not the point here.
Huh, that is the point.
We were getting nowhere. Whenever we talked about our parents, it felt like we were on completely different pages. That all started when I told my parents about my pregnancy before I told my in-laws. Joe and I had a huge fight when he asked.
Why didn't you tell my parents first?
Of course, I had my reasons, like how I wasn't in the stable stage of pregnancy yet. Still, I can't deny that I wanted to make my own parents happy too. Even so, I never thought that would lead to a fight. Ever since then, Joe had been convinced that I didn't prioritize his parents because I disliked them. On top of that, he had started acting hostile, saying things like,
While my parents have been so good to you, what do you even have to complain about?
It's true, my in-laws are kind, and I love them.
I thought. I was not lying about that, but I love my own parents too, and their time isn't infinite. Wanting to see them while I still could was only natural. Nevertheless, to Joe, I just looked like a wife who was neglecting his family. That year, my father-in-law passed away during summer vacation, so I wasn't able to visit my own family. Joe convinced me, saying,
It'd be cruel to leave my mom all alone for Christmas now.
And I stayed with his family again instead of visiting mine. To be fair, my mother-in-law had become quite depressed after her husband passed away. The thought of her sitting alone watching the Christmas specials she used to watch with her husband broke my heart, so I agreed to the visit without much resistance. I genuinely wanted to be there for her, but then Joe said,
You're being unusually cooperative this time, trying to win my mom over.
Win her over? What does that even mean?
I wondered, but he probably didn't think much of that and just said that as a joke. Yet, even as a joke, it was an unpleasant thing to hear. Since then, Joe's behavior slowly shifted. He became more insensitive and domineering. Before I knew it, 5 years had passed since our marriage. By then, we'd had a child, and maybe Joe had gotten too comfortable with me, or he might think he could say anything without consequences. We had agreed that whoever got home first would handle the household chores, but he started coming home later and later on purpose. It was obvious he didn't want to do any housework. He even started saying things like,
That's why you're useless.
whenever I forgot to do something small. It felt like I was back at work, where even the tiniest mistakes weren't tolerated. A home like that brought no peace. Bit by bit, the stress started building up as I watched him change. Then, some time later, I got a call from my sister. She'd just given birth. I became an aunt for the first time. Besides, she had been staying with my parents since she didn't get along with her husband. With Christmas around the corner, I definitely wanted to go see them.
My sister just had a baby, so I want to visit my family for Christmas.
Can't you just call to congratulate her?
Are you serious? That's not the same thing, and you know it.
I couldn't hide my frustration when Joe shrugged, thinking calling her was just as good as visiting.
Why won't you let me go back to see my family? I could just go without asking, but I'm trying to talk it through with you. Could you at least take me seriously?
It's common sense for a wife to spend every Christmas with her husband's family. It's weird for a married woman to run back to her parents' place. Even your mom said so.
That was just their way of trying to keep me from worrying about the little things. The truth is, they're starting to feel lonely because I haven't been back in so long. And I'd like them to see their granddaughter more often too.
That's just how it is when you get married. Why are you still so hung up on your parents? Think about how women in the old days dedicated themselves to their husband's family. Be grateful I'm not making you live with my parents. Maybe you could do more for my family.
What kind of dusty, outdated idea is that?
I thought. I didn't even know he had wanted us to live with his parents. I always thought we weren't on the same page, but it turned out he had been putting up with a problematic wife the whole time. Furthermore, he expected me to just understand without him ever saying what was wrong. Since I couldn't do that, it seemed I was labeled a bad wife.
How am I supposed to know if you don't tell me?
You're the problem if I have to spell everything out for you. A wife should anticipate her husband's needs and act accordingly.
No woman like that. You should have married a robot.
You have no ambition. The fact that you're not even trying to aim for that is exactly what's wrong with you. I'm done talking to you until you understand.
What are you talking about?
Joe completely lost his temper, stormed off to the bedroom, and ignored me for days. If we already couldn't communicate, how did giving me the silent treatment help? I started wondering why I was still in that marriage at all. Surely, I'd stayed because I couldn't bring myself to completely hate him. Our sweet relationship from when we were dating had just changed after marriage. I wanted to believe we could get back to where we were, that love could bring us together again, and I'd been trying in my own way to make that happen, but that was long gone.
Oh my. How ridiculous.
I thought. That was time to move on. After thinking that over for a while, I turned to my daughter named Sarah and asked,
Hey, how about we move out?
Sarah didn't really understand but answered,
Okay.
That was all the encouragement I needed. Thus, I quietly moved out with her. Half a month later, the doorbell rang early in the morning. Peeking through the curtains, I could see Joe standing outside. As soon as I opened the door, he rushed in and clung to me.
I can't take it anymore. Help me, Mom.
I gently pulled him off, and his eyes widened when he realized who he'd grabbed.
Oh, Mary, what are you doing here?
Mary moved in with me.
Said my mother-in-law named Nancy, smiling warmly at him from behind me.
Huh?
Joe exclaimed, completely thrown off.
Christmas is coming up soon, and it's common sense for a wife to spend it with her husband's family, right? So I asked your mother, and we moved in here.
Wait a minute. What's going on? You left a note and just ran away from home.
He stood there in shock, while Nancy and I smiled sweetly at him.
I should be the one asking that question, Joe. Mary hasn't been able to visit her own parents even once, you know.
Well, but Mom, you said you wanted to see Mary too.
That's because you told me Mary was eager to come here. If she wanted to visit her parents, you should have let her. You don't seem to realize how lucky you are to have married such a wonderful woman.
Nancy's sharp words hit him, and he straightened up.
Anyway, what do you mean by help me? Don't tell me you can't manage anything at home now that Mary's gone.
Her pointed question made him look away. I could tell she was spot on. Joe's wrinkled clothes were enough evidence. Either they hadn't been washed, folded, or hung properly.
How pathetic. Acting all high and mighty with your wife, but you can't even take care of yourself.
Joe couldn't argue back and just mumbled.
Well, it's just. Mary is relying on you because she can't live on her own, so we're in the same boat. Don't just blame me.
His snide remark made me lose my last ounce of patience.
Excuse me? You're the one who said it's only proper for a wife to spend Christmas with her husband's family. Shouldn't you be praising me for being such an obedient wife? In the first place, aren't you embarrassed that at your age, you can't even take care of yourself and have to run back to your mom? You've been telling me how useless I am, that I have no sense, but you couldn't even see that coming when I decided to leave. Besides, you can't even manage on your own? Who's the useless one here? You're such a failure of a man.
I'd never spoken to Joe like that before. He was visibly shocked, which left him speechless, his mouth opening. He might have wanted to say something but couldn't find the words.
I've done everything you asked. I've supported you, played the role of the perfect wife. But you? You don't even bother talking to me. You just give me the silent treatment for days.
Well, I shouldn't have done that. I'm sorry.
When you ignore me like that, it means you're fine with whatever decision I make, right?
Wait, what do you mean?
Joe's face tightened at my words.
It's your fault for staying silent. That means you lost. I'm divorcing you.
Wait, hold on. You quit your job for me when we got married. We even have a kid, and now if we get divorced, it'll look like I couldn't take care of my own family.
Well, that's exactly right, isn't it? Where's the evidence that you've ever really provided?
No, there's none.
Nancy chimed in with a laugh. Joe couldn't say a word in response, just standing there silently.
As you can see, I like your parents enough to turn to your mom in a crisis. Yet, you never once listened when I told you how much I liked them.
You just express your feelings in a way that's too hard to understand.
Sure, if you say so. Since my feelings are so hard for you to understand, I'm divorcing you. You don't have the ability to pick up on my love, and that's on you.
The very words Joe had thrown at me all the time came right back to him like a boomerang, and he slumped down, defeated. Nancy eventually sent him home, and she let Sarah and me stay with her until the divorce was finalized. However, the divorce process was a battle. Joe wouldn't agree to the divorce, saying he wanted custody of our daughter or that he wanted to try again. He tried everything, crying, sending me a dramatic second chance love letter, and the whole act. If he really didn't want a divorce that badly, he should have treated me better from the start. It was too late for him to regret that. I wasn't very familiar with the law myself, and I had no idea the divorce process would be that complicated, so at first, I was really overwhelmed. I even wondered if it was possible to get a divorce if my husband refused. When he threatened not to pay child support, I panicked and thought,
Wait, I'm not going to get anything.
Thankfully, my sister connected me with a lawyer who specialized in divorce, and we finally got that settled. It turned out that wasn't a very complicated case to begin with. That was a learning experience for sure. I got full custody of my daughter without any issues. Although the process took time, Sarah and I were finally free. Sarah sees my parents more often, and there's something about her that just seems brighter. According to my ex-colleagues, Joe fell apart at work after the divorce. He was distracted all the time, making mistakes repeatedly. One of those mistakes was a major order mix-up with a client, which ended up causing serious damage to the company. As a result, his boss took a pay cut. Joe got demoted, and he'd also been resented by his team members, who had to suffer along with him. He's now in a pretty bad position at work, with younger colleagues surpassing him, and his boss and team members gossiping about how that was all his fault. Even though I'm no longer with Joe, I sometimes let Sarah see Nancy, who is her grandma after all. They even went to a summer festival together last year, and Nancy spoiled Sarah with cotton candy. Sarah even said,
I like Grandma better than Mom.
I guess that's how it goes. Parents have to be the tough ones. Even so, when I was sick, Sarah was on the verge of tears, running around to change my cooling pads, saying,
Mom, are you okay? Please get better.
Anyway, I think the bond between us is strong. Sarah is also really close with my parents and always wants to visit them during long breaks. She even looks forward to meeting my sister's daughter. Funnily enough, Sarah prefers visiting Grandma's house to Disneyland. Wait a minute, I'm starting to think Sarah actually likes her grandparents and cousin more than me. I'm getting worried now. Still, I won't forget that during her school open house, she said.
Mom is my favorite person in the world.
And I'll hold on to that. I'm going to keep being her number one. This year, I'll make her favorite chocolate tart for her birthday.